Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to practice with your different exposure modes from the last video. Today we're going to talk more about the aperture priority mode on your camera. So let's go ahead and switch into that. The aperture is the first thing I want to talk about in our exposure triangle because we have aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Okay? The aperture should be the first setting you change when it comes to exposing for your picture. Okay? Your aperture also controls the amount of detail in your picture. We've talked about this in the last section. So of these three camera settings, the aperture should be the first one you change, which kind of implies that shooting in aperture priority mode should be the mode you should always shoot in. And that's why it is the most popular one among photographers. Okay, aperture priority allows us to control, let's say, the aesthetics of the picture. So whether we want more blur or more detail, the aperture priority is going to let us do that, while the shutter speed will be controlled by the camera. Okay, so of any mode, if we're struggling to get into manual mode or struggling to get out of auto mode, aperture priority is the one I suggest you use all the time. Okay, the only other mode you should be using is manual mode. All right, so in our exposure triangle, adjust your aperture first, okay? Because nothing's more important than determining, do we want more blur or less blur in our pictures, okay? Again, as a reminder, wherever you focus, whether it's on a highlight or a shadow, will determine the shutter speed. So if you're like, I want a blurry background, or I want a picture with a lot of detail, okay, and you focus in a shadow spot or a highlight, okay, the shutter speed will accommodate accordingly to get that one spot that you focused on to a neutral exposure. So if your subject moves, or if you're having a hard time getting it exposed despite being an aperture priority, pay attention to where you're focusing, and you might need to focus on a highlight to get it to focus or to expose correctly. Okay, because the camera's trying to achieve a neutral exposure when that tick mark inside the viewfinder reaches 0. Okay, so that's aperture priority mode. It is the one you should be shooting in all the time. Okay, now let's go on to the next video. Let's talk about shutter speed.